Hello, I am Deepak Kumar Behra. I am a social anthropologist by training. So, greetings to everyone from Sambalpur University. The topic that I have chosen for my lecture is approaches to and strategy for tribal development in India. Most development efforts and initiatives in tribal areas have not produced the expected or desired result. During past several years, we have been changing our approaches to and strategy for tribal development. If we look at different approaches, there are a number of approaches. I would start with the growth of income approach. In this approach, heavy emphasis was given on economic aspects such as per capita income, growth of per capita income, and injection of outside investment, technological know-how. But later on, the planner and policymakers started realizing development is far more complex than increase in per capita income. Then, again there was a switch over to institutional approach where institution became point of reference. Varieties of variables measuring health, education, sanitary condition, calorie intake, protein consumptions were added. And the individual who are in need of a service have to move to the block, hospital, school. Those are the institutions. But institutions were often measured by their size and style rather than the quality of personnel working in them and the quality of service they provide to the people. So people living far away from the institution couldn't profit from these, those institutions. And development became spotty and began to generate center of development on the one hand and vast tract of untouched terrain on the other. Then again there was a switchover from institutional approach to liberation approach. Development could start from below. Words like grassroots, barefoot became popular, and attempts were made to liberate tribal people from the bondage of debt, and there were attempts to make them self-sufficient. But even at this level, plannings were all done by programmer and policymaker, and people didn't get enough scope to participate. So again, this didn't succeed, and there was again shift, integration approach. So attempts were made to ensure greater flow of benefits from haves to have-nots, and development of tribal people was viewed from the angle of the policymaker. But again, during that time there was a confusion. There was a debate between Gure and Elwin. Barrier Elwin advocated a policy of isolation, and he floated the concept of national park, where the tribal people could live safely without being victims of what Elwin called an overesty and unregulated process of belief and civilization. And Hutton also supported him. But both Hutton and Elwin were severely criticized for recommending this policy of isolation. And then G.S. Gure appeared on the screen, national screen and scenario, and he advocated a policy of assimilation. According to G.S. Gure, the tribal are backward Hindus and they should be completely assimilated to Hindu culture. But D.N. Majumdar was intelligent and he chose a path, middle path, and he put forward a philosophy of integration. He says that it is not possible to leave them to their own lot, and it is not also possible to completely assimilate them into the Hindu culture. Therefore, a gradual integration of the tribal people is the best policy. So, in that way, there was again change in the approaches to tribal development, and then some people started floating the idea of development dialogue and invited people to participate at the level of program implementation. They call it development dialogue, people are not allowed to participate at the level of formulating a project. They were called upon to participate at the level of implementing a project. So here one can see that partners in the process of development are not of equal strength. So again, during 1975, during 5th five-year plan, the sub-plan approach came into being, and they divided the entire geographical space of India into 3 different types, where area having more than 50% tribal concentration, then dispersed tribal, and PVTG, particularly vulnerable tribal group. At that time, it was known as primitive tribal group. Now that has been renamed as PVTG. And 16 states and 2 union territories were included in the plan during the 5th five-year plan under the sub-plan approach. And they devised different strategies for development to these 3 different categories, inhabiting in those 3 different categories of geographical space. Then, the buzzword sustainable development came into being, and even people started talking about sustainable tribal development. That means development which meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. So they said that the development should be culture focused, culture friendly, and the sustainable development is likely to achieve lasting satisfaction of human needs and improvement of the quality of human life. And it is also argued that the lesson of ecology can and should be applied to economic progress. And now let us also look at Nehru's Panchashila. Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, formulated 5 fundamental principles for the development of the tribals. Number 1, people should develop along the line of their own genius, and the imposition of alien values should be avoided as far as possible. Tribal rights in the land and forest should be respected. Teams of tribals should be trained in the work of administration and development. Tribal areas should not be over-administered or overwhelmed with a multiplicity of schemes. Results should be judged not by statistics or the amount of money spent, but by the human character that is evolved. So here what we see that development should be self-reliant, it should be cost-effective, and it should be people-centric. And now let me, having said all these approaches, let me switch over to strategy for sustainable development. Number 1, we must have a priori understanding of the social, organization and cultural values of the concerned community if you want to have sustainable tribal development. And it is very important to give importance on the quality of life. So all the time we go for quantification, but what kind of life finally they are given as an end product of development, that is to be assessed. And we have to build up the inner strength of the people and create an appropriate socio-cultural infrastructure so that they can withstand the pressure of the new situation. This is also very, very important. And there should be, a linkage between local and national level of development. All the time, people should not be called upon to make a sacrifice. There is a saying that development takes place at the cost of underdevelopment. And if you want to develop, let us say, maybe the capital city of India, Delhi, you should not perpetuate backwardness in a region like KBK, which is inhabited by the poor tribals. So that is why a meaningful link should be established between national and local level of development. And then, in a particular area, sometimes we try to introduce project de novo, but it is very important to make assessment and see what are the human and material resources available in that region, and accordingly, orthogenetic development should be thought of, development from within. So, if the developer should think of floating a project where the material resources and human resources would bring in meaningfully, and there will be a sustainable development. And we must maintain primordial equilibrium among various components of the nature. That is also one of the important, components of sustainable tribal development. And many times, the economics talk about the cost-benefit analysis. This is the cost and this is the benefit the project is going to accrue. But cost-benefit analysis should be made at micro level. That is important for tribal development. It should not be judged at macro level. So that is what I call unjust cost-benefit analysis. If that is done at the micro level, that is just cost-benefit analysis. And many times, we ignore human factors in the process of development, whether it is general development or tribal development. And those human factors are like awareness, perception, motivation, and participation. So we should ask, if we are like the planner, policymaker, and agents of development, we should ask, are they aware of our, development project? If yes, what kind of perception do they have on our project? And if it is negative perception, that has to be changed to positive perception. Then only they will feel motivated and then come forward to participate in the process of development. As long as it is not there, we are ignoring human factors, and then we cannot expect sustainable tribal development. And it is very important to protect the inalienable rights and interests of the tribal people, and thereby provide them with their due share in the process of development. Sometimes, the tribal people are relegated to the background when it is a question of distributing the benefit of development. That's why it's very, very important that they should be given due share and they should get the benefit of development. And there are many also socio-cultural constraints which we ignore. It's very, very important to take cognizance of those socio-cultural constraints. Then only our process of development would be sustainable. And as long as we ignore, I have a number of examples, but due to time constraint, I am not going to discuss all those cultural constraints. And sometimes we think that these tribal people should be called upon to implement the project, but that's a wrong approach. We should involve them at the level of formulating a project. Then only they will feel, yes, it's our project. And that's why the co-partner in the process of development should be equal strength. And the participatory approach, what I said a while ago, that is very, very important. And and we should not transfer very high level of technology. It's very important to transfer appropriate level of technology, so that they will not feel confused, and we should address specific situation and need of the tribals. So now let me switch over to specific strategy for sustainable development. Point number one, we should give emphasis on a priori understanding of social organization and cultural values of the concerned community. So until we understand the cultural organization and social value of a community, it's very difficult to launch any developmental project there. So many times, the planner, policymaker go to the field and try to launch the development project there, and they fail miserably because they never try to understand the cultural organization and social values beforehand, and that is why they fail. Similarly, when we are thinking of a sustainable development, we should think about also the quality of life. That's very, very important indicator. I would say that is the most important indicator. Now let me cite the example of Rourkela steel plant. And Rourkela steel plant, if you go to the plant and meet tribal workers, they are now getting handsome salary. But you look at their life, the quality of life. They work in a very clumsy, in a congested environment, and they are exposed to dust particle. They sit in a very clumsy posture, and operate different kind of machine, and many of them die before their superannuation. What does it mean? Even if they are getting handsome salary, look at the quality of life. When you go to the rehabilitation resettlement colony, you never hear the beating of the drums, the dance. So those things are missing. So here what I would like to, emphasize that, development should not be quantified always. The human life, the quality of life is very, very important. So again, it is very important to also strike out a balance between local and national level of development, because all the time, people should not make sacrifice in the name of national development. Look at the case of, even our Hirakud Dam project. So some tribal people sacrifice their land along with the dominant agriculturalist caste Kulta, and people from Kamma and Kappu caste from Andhra Pradesh with East and West Godavari experience, they migrated to this place, and the land came into market, and it got handed over from the hands of the local tribals and Kulta to the hands of Kamma Kappu people of East and West Godavari. So here, actually, if you look at the whole scenario, those farmers were the messenger of God. They were the ones who introduced double cropping, HYB seed. Now the entire region, Otavira region of Odisha, has been converted into food basket of Odisha. But what happened at the end? So some people lost the land, and who are those people? The local tribals. So the question what I am raising, that local people interest should also be protected. In the name of national development, if these local people will be called upon to make a sacrifice, that is not good. There is a saying, development takes place at the cost of underdevelopment. And if you want to develop Delhi, you perpetuate backwardness in a region like KBK. So, is it fair? I know someone has to make a sacrifice on the altar of development. And who makes the sacrifice? People who are socially oppressed, culturally suppressed, and economically exploited. They are called upon to make the sacrifice. So this is not good. And we must also develop the inner strength of the people. And we should create an appropriate socio-cultural infrastructure so that they can withstand to the pressure of the new situation. And as an anthropologist, I feel and strongly feel, for us the infrastructure is culture, not economy, as per the Marxian framework. So, if culture is taken as infrastructure upon which the superstructure is based upon, it includes everything, including economy. So that should be the lens for social anthropologists, for experts in tribal study to view tribal development. And similarly, you must first assess the local human and material resources so that you can have a sustainable development project. Now, here I would like to give again one example from Odisha, where I have done extensive work on tribal study. I would like to cite the example of Markedia tribe. They are also known as Biro. And this Markedia tribe, they chant Indrazal mantra and trap monkey. And monkey place is a delicacy in the community. So they are very good rope makers. And they have the technical know-how for roping and making ropes. Now here see, and if you go to that area, Redakol area, you will find one plant. The name of the plant is Murga, and that plant is used as a raw material for producing rope. They also prepare rope from the bark of certain trees, and those trees are also available in that area. Now the human resource is available and the material resource is available. So as a agent of development, we should try to bring close or establish a link between this material and human resource, and that would be a low cost project because that is their primary occupation. The primary occupation of Markedia is rope making. So when you provide further training, they would be happy to accept it. Okay, and obviously help them in the marketing process and also help them in preparing refined variety of ropes instead of the coarse variety of rope. So here is a meaningful project, and they will accept it gladly. But what is happening in that region now, I don't know whether it is a good or bad plan. So they are encouraged to go for coffee plantation. Coffee is unheard of in the community culture, but now they are encouraging. So sometimes they don't accept it. This is very, very important. And you should also use the traditional channel for implementing any development project. Already there are many traditional groups. For example, if you take the case of some tribes, they have youth dormitories. So where youth assemble and they discuss about the community and they discuss about the developmental projects. So why not you try to implement some of the development projects through the already established community institution or traditional institution. But what we do, we try to establish new institution, and then we try to channelize our development projects through those institutions. And again, we find failure there. So it is one important aspect where we should be very careful. And again, as a planner, policy maker, we should be very careful to ensure that there is a primordial equilibrium among various components of nature. And if one component is disturbed, there will be a chain reaction and it will destabilize the entire system. Next point, what I would like to point out is cost benefit analysis. Most of the time, the cost benefit analysis is viewed at the macro level. And it is viewed at the macro level by the economist. But as student of tribal society, we should try to view it at the micro level. And that is just cost benefit analysis. Otherwise, I would call it unjust cost benefit analysis. You look at the Upper Indravati project in Odisha. I'm sorry, I would cite examples from Odisha where I have done intensive fieldwork and I know about the tribal situation in Odisha. So in Upper Indravati project, so most of the sacrifices were made by the tribals, near the dam side. But who benefited, who got benefit from the project? It was rich farmer in Kalahandi. And the sacrifice was made by a tribal person in the command area. So you see the unjust cost benefit analysis. When you will say that so many persons have been benefited by the project and only limited number of people have made sacrifice. But look at those people who have made sacrifice. All those people are tribal and who have taken benefit from the project, the rich farmers. So is it just cost benefit analysis or unjust cost benefit analysis? If you look at the situation at a macro level, it will appear you that okay, the benefit is more than the cost. But when you look at the micro angle, you see that the people, those who have made sacrifice, they have not received any benefit. When it's a question of distributing the fruits of development, they have been relegated to the background. So that is also not fair and we can't call it sustainable development. Now I would like to bring another important dimension to sustainable tribal development, and that is human factors. Many times these human factors are not taken cognizance of, and those human factors are like awareness, perception, motivation and participation. Let me begin with awareness. So now we should ask as the agent of development whether the targeted population, members of the targeted population are aware of our development projects or development project. If yes, how do they perceive our project? Is it a positive perception or negative perception? So if the awareness is not there, we have to create awareness. If the perception is negative, we have to change their perception and we have to make it positive perception. Then only they will feel motivated. And once they feel motivated, they will come forward and participate in our project. And then that will be sustainable development project. But we never think of the human factors. We straight expect their participation and they never come forward and they think that it is a government project and they raise their brow and they develop a kind of suspicion that this project could harm us more than helping us. And again, it is very, very important to protect their inalienable rights and interest. Otherwise, they will feel deprived. Many of the tribal people, don't have patta lands. When you try to give them compensation, you ask them for the patta records, right of records, and many of the tribal people living in the remote area, they don't have right of records. So they fail to produce, and you never produce them compensation. And what about skill? Many of the tribals are also like artisan tribes. I mean, like blacksmith, and now Lohar. He has got the skill, but he doesn't have the land. But you produce compensation land for land. And what about this man who has skill but doesn't have land? You are not going to provide any compensation. So this aspect also should be taken care of. And there are many socio-cultural constraints, and that we should understand. I would like to bring in a couple of examples. One, that of a Didai tribe. You will find them in KBK region, and there was a housing project in Didai's community, and people didn't accept. People didn't accept the benefit, housing project benefit given by the government. And then when it was interrogated, they gave the explanation. In a Didai family or Didai house, you will find a central pole, and they don't keep many doors and windows, and the doors and windows are very small. And the belief is like that if you don't put a lamp, burning lamp on the central pole after sunset, so the spirit ghost may enter, and the house environment will be disturbed. But those, people who are in charge of construction, the builders, design it in terms of hygienic sense, and that is why he failed. Because they put windows front to front, big doors, no central pole. So that is why these people didn't accept this project. You see, look at here, the socio-cultural constraint. I am reminded of another tribe, Paudi Bhuya. And Paudi Bhuya community, they feel that the child comes to the earth by a natural means, and it should not be prevented from coming to the earth by any unnatural means. And here I am reminded of a doctor. So we are doing field work in a remote area, and the doctor came, and he used to call me Dada, like the elder brother. And he said, Dada, I am well sort of target. These women are not accepting family planning, and the CDMO is going to visit my camp, my hospital, and I am well sort of target. And I asked, what is the reason? I said, I don't know. I mean, he used very, unacceptable term, like they are uneducated, barbaric, and so and so forth. So uncivilized. Then I mean, requested some of my girl students to, intervene there. And when they interrogated, they got this answer that if any women would go for, that family planning, people would not accept water and food from her hand, and there would be hookup and iban. There will be a social ostracism. See the socio-cultural constraint, because they feel that the child comes to the earth in a natural way and it should not be prevented by any unnatural means, and family planning here is a unnatural means for them, and that is why this kind of restriction. The poor doctor, without understanding the socio-cultural constraint, was feeling concerned about the target. So how socio-cultural constraints are also very important, that we should look into. And many times we feel that okay, they are uneducated, they are uncivilized, and we use many filthy words. But the partners should be of equal strength. The partners, co-partners in the process of development should be of equal strength. Now, all the time we feel that we are the developer, and we try to control the project, and we feel that okay, they are the recipient and they are inferior to us, and that is the point where we go wrong seriously. So when we talk about participatory approach, participation should take place at the level of formulating a project, not at the level of implementing a project. Otherwise, again, that is not sustainable tribal development. And I have been emphasizing that development from within we call it orthogenetic development. That should be advocated as a substitute to the heterogenetic development coming from outside. So if you bring development from outside, they are not going to accept it. So they should be, they should be given training to develop their resources, and our role should be like the role of a facilitator, and we should not play the role of big brother in the process of development. And I've already said, there are many cultural regulators in a tribal community. So when we try to reach the tribal community with our development projects and we do kind of intervention, sometimes our intervention destabilize those cultural regulators, which are very, very important. When it's a question of sustainable tribal development, we should address the specific situation and the needs of the tribal people, and we should view them as subject of development and not object of development. And we should again play the role of facilitator, and we should not play the role of program manager. That is the point where we go wrong. And if we follow all these strategies which I have suggested, our development, tribal development, would be sustainable tribal development. Thank you very much for your questions, Puliari.